Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever heard of the name Scarlatti? He shares the same date of birth as Johann Sebastian Bach, so it's worth diving into his music. Johann reached out in the comment section and he asked for a Scarlatti piece, and so I selected the Sonata in D minor, Kirkpatrick, that's the K1, that's the index of the Scarlatti pieces. I don't know exactly if they're chronological, I don't think so, but whatever, it's a beautiful piece. And what's really cool about this is that we can dive into some basic principles of expression. We're going to do that. And at the end of this video, there is a kind of surprise, a kind of plot twist for you. Because I'm not playing from the score you see on the screen, which is a Kenneth Gilbert edition, which is available on IMSLP that I will give you here on screen. But for now, you get the score on screen, but it's not the score I'm playing from, and that has a reason. But I will reveal that at the very end of this video. It's kind of important and also not important. Let's dive into the Scarlatti Sonata in D minor right away. So 4/4 common time, 16th notes. This is a notation that you could very well compare with Bach's invention number 1. If you take your score of the inventions and you open the number 1, you see that's a similar type of notation. That's common time. That's the basic time signature bar structure notation, you could say, which is connected most closely to the tempo ordinario, like the middle tempo. So there are a lot of sources and nobody debates that. Actually, it's not the whole beat, single beat discussion in the 18th century that, and actually also earlier, Mersenne in the 17th century, that connected this type of measure to 1 second. So every quarter note is 1 second. On your metronome, that would mean like 60 for the quarter note. So I'm choosing like a pulse around this area, maybe a little slower because it's D minor, but that's up to your taste. So I just play a few bars and then we dive into the construction of the music and see if we can make something musical of this. And musical mean meaningful for the listener. So let's just play a few bars and I won't do anything special. So by nothing special, I should explain that like not more than just what is naturally coming up when I'm playing this music. Of course, I've played like thousands of pieces like this, and so you develop a kind of natural sense of what people would call interpretation, but interpretation is like something that you have to explain what you mean by that. Interpretation is, as I see it, just translating the score and adding the things that are not in the score. For instance, accentuation, articulation, choice of tempo. That's also something that's most of the times not indicated in the score. Again, at the end of the video, there is like a twist of the story to this particular sonata and Scarlatti in general. So there are many things that are not in the score and that you have to add more or less as an interpreter, as a player. Whether you play for yourself, whether you play for people, when you play in Carnegie Hall, in order to translate the music for the listener to enjoy and to understand. I give you an example. And so by saying like I'm not doing much, I'm not adding anything, of course I'm adding something, because otherwise the music sounds flat. I will play it for you as flat as I possibly can, which is difficult, but I'll try. And even now I'm doing like so even giving accents. So it's very hard to do nothing, like very flat. What I hear some students that I had or have do a lot is giving too many accents, and you get these typical performances like or even a little bit slower here. And that's understandable, because what happens is that you want to press every key like correctly, and then you have like an emphasis on every note of the piece, but then it becomes very heavy, as if I am talking like this. Of course, when you speak and when you play music, that's the same thing. You have to give accents. You have to guide the listener from one point to the other. What is important? What is not important? If I look at the first phrase here, not all the notes are important, so not every note is as important as the other one. So you have to choose. And depending on the tempo that you take, it can be like the first 16th of that group of 4, or it could be like every third 16th notes, like, or you do this, or that depends a little bit on the piece. You cannot make a general rule, but the general rule you can say is you cannot emphasize, accentuate each and every note. It's not possible, it doesn't work. The music gets like a label of ununderstandability, and especially when you play a little slower, like when you play later music in this tempo, which is whole beat, then people who are not used to playing this way, they also professional musicians, they say it doesn't work because they go immediately into over accentuation mode, and then of course the music starts to become heavy. It's all about accentuation. Accentuation is the most important thing in music. Articulation is important, but accentuation is really guiding the listener through the music and to make it understandable. So let's work a little bit here on the first bars and see what we can come up with, how we can shape the structure of this piece. Of course, I was saying in the beginning, it's simpler than Bach, this music, and I would say it's a lot simpler. It has some similar ingredients. For instance, the left hand imitates the right hand. Very important that you give the same accents in the left hand as in the right hand, because otherwise it's very confusing to listen to it. And when you do it in the same way, it's very pleasant. People like that. Just an imitation. People back in those days, we still like that. And then it continues with a much simpler left hand. Bach would never do that, or never, not very easily. And in Inventions he doesn't. But there is a difficulty if you have only 8 notes now. How do you do that? Because if you have 16 notes, you have more material to work with. For instance, here, I give an accent on every top note so that you get this line. You don't have. You have something in my throat. But if you have no 16th notes anymore, then the music can become heavy again. And heavy not in the sense of like slow, but heavy in the sense of like it just falls on earth, you know, like it's like ugh, too heavy, like you have to carry it. And music should, when you have a tempo, when you have like a balanced tempo where every aspect of your performance works, the articulation, phrasing, whatever, then everything is in balance and the music starts to lift itself. It's kind of floating, kind of flying, and you don't have to push it. It just goes by itself. That's also the reason when people play, have a habit of playing much too fast, like in today's performance practice, and they go slower. It doesn't work because they didn't learn to do these similar principles that they actually execute perfectly when they play much faster. And then it's much easier to find for those balances also in a much slower tempo. but that's of course doable. So here are the 8 notes. That of course doesn't work. But on the other hand, like if you play it much faster, you have like a strong accent every 2 quarter notes, which makes it much easier. That's the prime reason that people tend to play faster and faster and faster, because it is much easier, and you get these rhythmical pulses after, like in this case, 4 8th notes or 8 16th notes. And then the listener, of course, is guided from one pulse to the other pulse to the other pulse to the other pulse. But it's like driving through a landscape that is designed for you to enjoy when you're on your horse. And you're put as a listener into a Ferrari and you drive through the same landscape. Of course, it doesn't work, because you don't see anything anymore. You have only the impulses, like the big things. And that might work. But the question is if the music is designed like that. So if you have only 8 notes, it's a little bit more complex. So you have to also give them the accents. There's no escape. One of the 8 notes is more important than the other one. So I would do it like this. And not more than that. That's enough. Yari ta ti ta ti ta ta pam pam tiram tiaram tam pam pa tam pam pam pam. And the left hand tam pam pam tim. Like string players, like jump pam pam, or even with the bow. I mean, I'm not a violinist, but you get my point. Like yum. If you want to have, like, Scarlatti is sometimes a little bit simplistic in a good way. That's also why its music is so popular. And I'm not saying this to downplay Scarlatti compared to Bach. I mean, there's no need to do that. It serves a different purpose. But if you like this sequentia like this, you might want to just vary a little bit. But it's the detail. Like, for instance, like this. It starts here. So, not saying that you have to do it like this, but just a little bit. And the listener, that's 4 times here, that's a lot. I mean, 3 times is already a lot if you repeat something, but 4 times it can become a little bit boring, you know? And so that's your task as a performer, to do a little bit extra, a little bit more accentuation. You go a little bit more piano. If you play on a piano or a clavichord, you play on a harpsichord, you do a little bit more over legato or whatever. Something in that sense. Second time. Contrast here. Contrast. Contrast. Again. Dum, bum, bum, dum. Probably for 2 manuals here, but it's very, very well solvable. Like here, you make the left hand staccato. Accent. Here the climax. In the last bar I give the largest or the biggest accent. I'm not only doing that by playing the note louder, but I'm also doing that by holding the note a little longer, so that you have, as a listener, I pull your attention to that note. Ya ram pa di da di da di da di, like that. Ya ka di da di da. Always think in terms of like how would string players play that, how would wind players play that. Keyboard instruments are just an imitation of that. Or singers. you could say, in fact, what I'm doing, my interpretation, so to say, on one hand, you could say I'm adding a lot, instead of da, ba, ba, ba. And on the other hand, you could say I'm adding actually nothing. It's just holding some notes a little longer, giving some notes a little bit of an accent. And of course, the difficulty is, if you try this now, I would highly recommend that, and leave it in the comment how your experiment is going. Even share a link, though YouTube is actually by default deleting all the links that you would post. But anyways, try it. I can imagine that many of you will have difficulties searching for this balance, like where it is too much or where it is too little, or just to do something, like to find this door that leads you to this kind of accentuation. But that's also a question of experience, of course. It comes with years of practice and with focus on this. And of course, I can also imagine that many of you watching right now that just have also difficulties to play the notes. I mean, not everybody has the same technical skills, not everybody has the same years of experience. And so you have to find this balance, but you can do it a little bit slower and then try to find that. But you have to look for accentuation, holding notes a little longer, play them a little bit over legato when you play on harpsichord for sure. That's your expressive tool. On the clavichord, perfect as well. You have, of course, a dynamic range on top of that. When you play on a piano, then over legato might become sometimes a little blurry, so you can hold the note. You can also play the note a little louder, but one or the other. And then you will see that the character of the piece, so the story, so to say, actually is enhanced or maybe evoked by what you're doing as a player. And that's a tricky one, because when you compare it again to Bach's music, you take the first invention. When you would play the invention really bad, so to say, with accents on every 16th note and very heavy and what have you, but you play all the notes correctly, then still there is a story that Bach just gets through your performance. Music like this, of course, has a certain flavor, Scarlatti always, but it depends more on you as a performer than that the music itself puts in the air, so to say. If I just continue, I've not practiced this piece, just printed it out right before the episode to record the episode here. I just looked at it, of course, but so the performance is not perfect, but you get my point. I just wanted to share that with you. So let's just continue and see if the same principles apply to the rest of the piece. I guess so. And then we're actually already done with this piece. So interpretation, remember that, is applying the right principles that the composer in his time just assumed you as a player would know. And it's basically evolving around accentuation. That's by far the most important thing that you have to work with, especially when you apply whole beat tempos. And now we are in the Baroque time. Again, there's a twist at the end. There are some airplanes in the air. And you will hear them because these microphones are picking them up. But I feel much safer now. But when you play music of the 18th century, which generally today is not played, and inventions and stuff like that, not so fast, then you have to apply these principles. So let's just continue with the second part. Sorry. Sorry. Should have practiced. Also here, like tom, and now it's harmony change. I need you to hear that as a listener. So I'm not playing. So now there's a big accent on the first beat. And then the left hand. F sharp is the most important note. here, jumps. Don't fight them. Take your time. In this tempo, you're allowed to do that. You can do that. And then you get a natural accent. And so work with that. Don't fight your technique to go faster and faster towards the bottom, like. Because you will lose that battle. And many pianists are actually practicing like that, and that's a pity, because when you think about it, that the composer had a certain tempo in his mind, then you create a timeline on which he plugs in all the notes. Of course, when you compress that timeline, everything becomes like more condensed, but also more difficult. And then you come across, like, maybe not in Scarlatti, though I would not be surprised when you go online and you type in difficult Scarlatti, that you come into piano forums where people are actually discussing how difficult Scarlatti is, because see these jumps and these people have to be virtuosos. Of course, that shows how important your choice of tempo is, because when you miss that, you get a complete skewed view on music history. And I'm not saying that Scarlatti was like kind of amateur who couldn't do anything virtuosic or whatever. But when you see jumps like this, you don't have to think like, okay, I'm gonna play that. No, you have to think like, what tempo am I choosing in order to allow me to do that, and can I use these jumps in order to enhance the music? Chances are very, very high that the composer just, in this case, implemented those jumps to force you to make a bigger accent, and here it works. And again. So, and then of course, how much you're doing that, that's up to you. You have to find this middle way. And if I would record this piece and I would practice it a little bit more, then of course I have a little bit more freedom in the sense like deciding really what I want. Now I'm also preparing this because I'm kind of sight reading. But even then, that music is kind of made for that. So let's just finish the piece, and then I have the final thing to reveal to you. And if you're still here, you won't regret it. Also here, don't play 3 times the same thing. I wait also a little bit here. Ya pom 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 pom. So if you play on a harpsichord with 2 manuals or on an organ, just go to another manual. That's like a very nice effect, an echo and then a confirmation the 3rd time. So 1. So again. Confirmation. Wrong notes, but also here, closure of the piece, more accents. Pom pom pom, sorry. But now we come to the plot twist, and it's not really a plot twist, but it's something really, really cool. I was not playing from the Kenneth Gilbert score that you saw on screen, but I was playing from a score or from an edition made by Alessandro Longo. And Longo is a pianist who was born in the 1860s, and he died, if I remember well, in 1945 or something like that. So you could say it's like one of the last versions of the really romantic pianist. And he made editions also from Scarlatti, for Scarlatti's music, a lot of them, and he metronymized those. And so we talk about single beat, whole beat, and metronymized. And now, how far did it go into the 20th century? The book will have actually a section devoted to that. There are some crazy things in the 20th century, but that's the topic that needs to be researched more in the future. But it's as a matter of fact, you can really factually say that in the 20th century people still used whole beat. And if you see the metronome marks that Longo left, he has quarter note 112. And now, the tempo that I had, I don't know if you found it slow or fast or whatever. But I'm playing now an eighth note 112, so Longo's metronomization, for what it's worth, it's my take on it. There is only one possibility, that you read those metronome marks in whole beat and then they align perfectly with 18th century tempos. Maybe you could say like I go a little bit slower even than whole beat, but they're very comparable to what Czerny used for Bach's music. I mean, in this case, Czerny gave 138 for the first invention, which is still faster. But he marks the piece with Allegro Vivace, I think, the first, so it is also faster than Allegro here. But yeah, go and search on IMSLP for Alessandro Longo and just dive into his work as an editor. He was a student of Tausig, if I'm not, I think so, one of the great pianists of the 19th century. No, he was a student of someone else in Italian, Benjamin Sesi, I think, and he was a student of Tausig. So there is a line. But anyways, just dive into this course, let me know what you think about this metronomization and use it in whole beat. It will enable you also to find a kind of correct tempo, because the tempos I checked several scores, they seem to be fine to me. And that will guide you also in a kind of certain basis of your tempo. And if it's too fast, just go slower than that. There's nothing wrong with playing according to your ability and to apply the same principles that we talked about in this video. Okay, that was all I've got for you today. As a final thing of this video, of course, as always, I thank my Patreons for making all of this possible. Go and check it out. There is a new practicing session now on the Mozart piece that you don't want to miss. I'm going to make also a YouTube video on that, but that will be for a little bit later. Also updates you get there, and there's an awesome community on Discord that you can join, and you support, of course, my work as a researcher and also as a provider of content, hopefully for you to enjoy. Okay, that was really all I've got for you today. Thank you for watching, and we see each other very soon again. Bye.